Hi. Okay, I have something I really want to share with you guys. It's something I created after reading the book Power versus Force. And it's a really dense book. He's one of those writers who just retains a lot of mental knowledge. So it can be a little bit hard to get through, but this particular nugget really stuck with me and my process. And I have found myself repeating my thoughts on neutrality with a lot of my clients, a lot of my personal friends, and implementing it with myself. So we're each having an individual experience, but we're also having a collective experience together. So I find when I start to repeat a lot of things that this is a collective experience for all of us. So I wanted to tap in with this and share this with you. This PDF is available in my profile. You can screenshot it or download it or whatever is the simplest for you to consume, but I'm also going to share it with you. So this is the map of consciousness, and this part right here came directly from the book. This is kind of your vibrational bandwidth that you're operating in, up and down, and this is the words associated with it. I use this a lot with clients who are maybe stuck in something, processing something, or working through something, so we can identify where they're at vibrationally and what actionable steps that they can make micro movements towards. And I'll cover that in a minute. This is going to be a little bit longer. No problem if you're like a surface follower of me and just enjoy my shit posting, just scroll on. If you enjoy more of the depth of what I share, you'll love this. So this chart, under 200 in his book, he explains that the majority of the population operates at these frequencies under 200: shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, and pride. And I had a theory based on my entrepreneurial experiences. And my theory was that entrepreneurship is the doorway to enlightenment. And I'll share why I think that. Entrepreneurs as a whole require an excessive amount of courage. We're investing usually all of our time, all of our money, all of our resources internally to help something come to fruition that we had this guttural, that's how I operate, a guttural response to, like, we could see it manifesting in the physical and we were going to invest in it with everything we have. Oftentimes in that experience, a lot of us experience a lot of this pushback and resistance from the people in our lives. That's crazy. Why don't you just get a regular job? You know, it looks like that. We're all like, in the beginning, that's a really prevalent experience. And it's the universe is asking you, how sure? How sure are you? Are you serious about this? And you step into courage each time that you hit that head on. I'm doing this. I don't give a fuck what you think. I've got this covered. I'm going to get this done. Even though I can't see how it's going to work out, I know it's going to work out for my betterment, regardless of if the business is successful or not. A lot of times I've started 10 plus businesses and 3 of them are in fruition right now. And there's been tons that have been just riffed on, ideas, spitballed, and tons that I've started and been like, yeah, that doesn't align with me. I'm not doing that anymore. It's not about the success of the business. It's about how you come into it and how you approach the resistance. So, and that's my theory on why courage, which is the 200 mark, which is where you really start to shift into awareness, consciousness, and really creating from wholeness. So that's a brief overview of how I view entrepreneurship as the doorway to enlightenment, because we see here that enlightenment is at the top. And like in my mind, when you reach 1,000, you're just going to burst into cells and leave this experience. You're done here. That's an energetic perspective. So what I've been covering with numerous of my clients is this area here. You're in courage, but this neutrality area. So we hear tons of talk about triggers, right? Triggers this, triggers that. Like, triggers are the doorway to healing. But I don't like to use the word trigger. So I view everything from an energetic perspective. Every word has energy. Every emotion has energy. So this is like my Bible of energy. And I've added a lot of other things that we're not going to cover today to kind of tap more into it. But if this is my Bible of energy and I want to learn how to influence the energy within me and what I create with, this is what I go to gain my own clarity and to help my clients gain their clarity. So at triggers, for me, I don't use that word. I use the word, I'm shifted out of alignment. And for me, that's energetically a more, I don't want to say better because that's not how I feel about it, but it's a more honoring way to describe what I'm doing on the inside. I've shifted out of neutrality. And like if we're viewing negatively polarized energy and we're viewing positively polarized energy on this side, and there's everything in between, but neutral is dead center. And as you can see on the chart, after you hit courage, you hit neutrality, and then you hit willingness, and you hit acceptance, and then all the way up. So if we're in neutrality, what that looks like is we don't have ties to the outcome. We've got the courage supporting us. We've backed ourselves up with a lot of knowledge, a lot of life experience, and we're neutral in an experience. When you are creating from neutrality, you don't have any hold or resistance on being able to shift up into all the way into enlightenment. And if my theory is correct and we burst into cells, I'm here for it. I want to do it. But when we're in neutrality, this is the place where we start to learn how to influence the energy for our highest good and for everyone in the collective's highest good. So when we pull in to that neutrality and we stay here, we're not tied to outcomes. Like if one of my businesses craps out, cool. I mean, I don't want to go through that, but there must be a reason I chose that experience. And I'm going to hit the other 2 or 3 really hard now because I have more space to do so. So I'm not tied to these businesses showing up the way I want them to. I for sure am going to invest in the areas that bring me returns. For sure. That's just intelligence, reason, logic. But in neutrality, I'm not tied to a certain relationship showing up a certain way. I'm not tied to my children doing certain things to keep me happy. I have neutrality around their choices. Everyone in my experience, their choices affect me. And when I'm in neutrality, shifting out of it, if we're going back to this is negatively polarized energy, and this is positively polarized energy. When we're triggered, shifted out of neutrality, we tend to micro movement towards negatively polarized energy. Because the majority of our entire globe is operating at 200 or lower, pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. Most of the people are operating in that energy. When we're in neutrality and we experience something that shifts us out towards the negatively polarized, we have a choice. And we can choose to engage with that feeling of pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. And if we do, this is a conscious choice, even though it may be coming from our subconscious experience, we then create a negative energetic karmic loop with whatever that feeling, whatever that vibration is. Most of us in this experience are below 200. So most of us are always here. We're shifted out of neutrality towards negatively polarized experience. So when we've been triggered, shifted out of neutrality, we have a choice and we simply get to see the choice. It's never about doing. We see the choice and we decide whether to engage with it or not. And you can engage with it really quickly, or you can bring awareness to the fact that this is something we're all doing and you can just look at it. This is the difference between responding and reacting. And when we just look at it and we think, oh, this is familiar. I know this feeling. I'm really interested in repeating this negative, polarized karmic loop. And then we recreate different experiences with different people to show us the same things we've always gotten. So if we start to look at the fact that we're shifted out of neutrality, we have a choice here. Even if we've engaged with it, we get numerous choices over and over and over. Do I want to recreate here? And what I'm working on with my clients is shifting back to neutrality, recognizing we have the choice to respond, not just react. Usually looks like pausing, taking some deep breaths, coming back to yourself, identifying what your end goal is, what you really want with this person, in this business, with this experience, and then choosing to remain in neutrality with the discomfort. Neutrality, although not negatively polarized or positively polarized, still often manifests as some extreme discomfort because it's not familiar. When you get comfortable being uncomfortable, you have a lot of power to create from neutrality. It's a super simple process. It's not always easy to get to. So when we start to stay in neutrality, then we start to be able to make micro movements towards positive energetic loops. Now, I'm a big Pilates fan. I'll explain it, but this is going to be a foreign concept to somebody who's not in Pilates. When you do Pilates, you're doing a lot of work with your pelvic floor. And it's kind of like this solid, but a thin muscle area. And your instructor, a good instructor, explains what they're doing. And it's very, very micro movements to retrain the muscles. And they view it as a clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. I did it backwards, but you get the point. And you shift the marble. And at first you shift it in a diamond shape, one direction. And then you start to kind of subtly slow that down and you create more of a circle. Then you shift it the other direction. So in this place is neutrality. And this is learning how to influence the energy if we're transitioning that to energy now. So we have shifted, and then we've gone in slow micro movements to bring awareness to the muscle that it's time to engage. When you shift negatively polarized, you create resistance in the muscle, which prevents blood flow and restriction. That's negatively polarized. When you smooth it out and you circle it around, you bring blood flow to a muscle that you don't engage a lot mentally. So it's got some apathy to it. So you're training that muscle to show up in a certain way. It's exactly the same of how you influence energy. So you're in neutrality, you got triggered, you got the opportunity to look at the potential to create on a negative energetic loop. You've done it a million times. It would be super simple to do and very familiar. But when you're influencing from a space of neutrality, you can start to make those micro movements in the energy or the muscle. And you shift tiny little things, tiny little micro movements towards positively polarized energetic loops. And you create from that space. And at first, it's foreign. It's kind of like when you're doing the clock, one way feels really natural. For us, the negative feels really natural. But when we shift to go this direction, it's like, oh my God, my muscle doesn't want to do that. It doesn't. It's like being right-handed or left-handed. Same concept. So you start to do these micro movements towards positively polarized energy. And pretty soon you're creating from neutrality in willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and ultimately enlightenment. Every time you train that apathetic muscle, that energy that you have not experienced before, that is a little bit unknown, so there's discomfort in it, you retrain on a positive karmic loop, and you get to create in a new space all the things you didn't even know existed. And I'm going to kind of end here with a cliffhanger because I want to explain that because we're always used to creating on this negative energetic side, we tend to see the timelines there. That's where you get recurring behavior. recurring codependency, abuse, things like that. People who marry the same person in different versions, things like that. When you start to make micro movements towards the positive energetic loop, you really start to open up these timelines you didn't even know existed. You get to embody a version of yourself you didn't even know could live in this experience. And it's really, really simple. It's so simple that we complicate the fuck out of it. And we just like micro movements. What do the micro movements look like? They look like keeping promises to yourself. They look like having good boundaries. They look like speaking your truth. They look like showing up for yourself, doing that workout you've been avoiding, taking your supplements, showing yourself love. The micro movements are super small, honoring the sovereignty of self and the sovereignty of other selves. They are we. There is no me, there is just we. So when you honor your sovereignty, you honor the sovereignty in another. I love this. I can't wait to hear what you think about creating from neutrality, and I'd be so interested to hear your perspective of it.